these aren't real because we're dealing with square roots of negative numbers. Okay? All right, so I equals square root of negative 1. I square equals what? Negative 1. I cubed. I'm just writing it down. You don't have to rewrite it.
No, like why are we learning this if they're not real?
Because you use imaginary numbers in engineering, because there are cases when the square root of a negative comes up. Telephone stuff, I'll have to look at practical examples. Don't have this for you right now.
Okay.
But in engineering it comes up. Okay?
Okay.
And there are these other things called complex numbers. So, but if you use enough of them multiplied by each other, you get to real numbers. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's just one way they made it too. So if I were to do I to the 5th, guess what? That would be square root of negative 1 or I. Okay, because I to the 5th would be I to the 4th times I. So if you can break it down by powers of 4, it's easy to come up with the number, what it is.
Okay.
So let's just look at an example or two. Right down there where it says, well, it kind of gives it in a different way. Let's just look at this. Let's say we had I to the 21st, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's I to the 4th times I to the 4th times I to the 4th times I to the 4th, 1, 2, 3, 4, times I to the 4th times what? I?
Mm-hmm.
So this is the same thing as I. I to the 21st is the same thing as I.
Okay.
Okay, because you can basically you divisibility out by 4 and then see what power's left, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you could also think it of I to the 21st is equal to I to the 20th, which is divisible by 4,
Mm-hmm.
right? Which is the same thing as 1. So 1 times I is I. Okay? It's a good idea when you're writing I's to either give it 2 tails or 1 tail and not just write it as a straight up, because you'll get it confused with other things.
Okay.
Okay? Just for notation's sake. Okay, so on our examples there, it wants us to simplify down these, so that's what we're going to do. Right now we're just looking at imaginary numbers. We're going to use them and do things with them later. But right now we're just kind of learning what it is. Okay, I to the 43rd. Well, the first thing you want to do is you want to rewrite it as a power times just 2 things. So I would break this up into I to the 40th times I to the 3rd. Does that make sense so far?
Yeah.
So I to the 40th is the same thing as what? Well, I to the 4th was 1, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I to the 40th would be I to the 4th to the 10th power,
Yeah.
so 1 to the 10th would still be 1. So it's 1 times I to the 3rd, so you're left with I to the 3rd. Okay?
That's it?
Well, almost. We would still say that's negative I. That would be
Okay.
as simple as it gets.
So, if it's an, does it always work out where if it's an odd number, it is a negative I?
No.
No.
Like if it's an odd,
If it's an odd
Because
3, it would be a
odd
negative I.
imaginary.
But,
If it's an odd 1, it's just an I.
An odd 5.
Like if I just said I to the
Yeah.
5, right?
Mm-hmm.
That would be I to the 4th times I, which is 1 times I, so it's I.
Oh, okay.
All right?
Okay.
So it's not so much the odd, it's just kind of, you need to think of it as every 4th one. It's just a repeating pattern, so you can simplify any of them.
Okay.
Okay? The cool part is this is on your calculator, and I can show you how to do that too. Okay? Let's look at the next one, which says I to the what? 25?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what power of 4 or what multiple of 4 is the easiest? 24?
24, yeah.
And what do I have left over? Just I?
Mm-hmm.
So what's that coming out to? 1 times I, which is I. The I's have it. I to the 38th. I'm leaving that one in there. Maybe. What power would this be? I to the what?
I had 36 times I said
I squared?
I squared.
Okay,
which
so
would
what's
be
I to the
negative
36? 1
1
times
negative
negative
1,
1, which is
negative
1. Are you seeing how this goes?
Mhm.
Okay, I to the 36.
Mm-hmm.
36 is a multiple of 4.
Yeah.
So this whole thing is 1. I squared is negative 1, because you have to memorize those.
Oh, yeah.
You have to
Okay.
know that I is square root of negative 1, I square is negative 1, I cubed is negative I, and I to the 4th is 1. You have to know those. Okay, that's all about simplifying complex or imaginary. Let's look at our next one, I to the 32nd.